Coast to coast. The Stephen A. Smith Show starts.
This. But there's an absolute revolution going on in sports right now. You name the sport. There's a revolution going on, and it's stemming from the same revelation, the same idea, the same thing that coaches across the sports landscape have figured out. Whether or not it's soccer or basketball or football, coaches over and over are figuring out a different way to win, a better way to win. And I spent my last weekend watching exactly the extent to which we are revolutionizing sports as we know it. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, on the ESPN app, SiriusXM Channel 80, and on ESPN News. Will Kane filling in for Stephen A. You can normally catch me 3 to 6 Eastern on all those same channels. And you can, of course, join the conversation, 888-729-3776. The Westbrook and Harden pairing, this dynamic duo, continues to feed debate. Exactly where does this duo rank in current NBA hierarchy? And how is it ever going to work? How do two ball-dominant guards fit in Houston? And better yet, as far as I'm concerned, how does it fit in with the revolution going on in sports, with the revolution going on in basketball? I'm going to explain to you exactly what I mean by that in just a moment here on ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance, making it easy to bundle your home and car insurance. But first, the Dallas Cowboys have a problem on their hands. The Dallas Cowboys need to figure out whether or not they're going to pay Dak Prescott his demands. And at the same time, while they're negotiating with Dak Prescott, there are rumblings that Ezekiel Elliott is making his way to the table. For several weeks, ESPN NFL front office insider Jeff Darlington has told me, watch Zeke. See what's going to happen with Zeke. Don't be surprised by a training camp holdout from Ezekiel Elliott. And now, Pro Football Talk has an article up right now that sources close to Ezekiel Elliott in private conversations have suggested that he may, like Melvin Gordon, running back of the Los Angeles Chargers, he may not show up for training camp. That Ezekiel Elliott may try to get paid this year. 2 years out from being a free agent, Ezekiel Elliott will look to get paid now by the Dallas Cowboys. I have a couple of thoughts on this. First of all, as we spoke to ESPN front office insider Louis Riddick 1 hour ago, I believe that there is a market correction coming to the running back position in the NFL. And Melvin Gordon may very well be the flashpoint of this market correction. For years now, if you were a great running back, if you had this kind of leverage, these kind of stats, this kind of position in the NFL's running back hierarchy, you got paid. Look what happened with Todd Gurley. $15 million a year, $45 million guaranteed. Look what happened with Devonta Freeman in Atlanta. And although the Pittsburgh Steelers walked away from Le'Veon Bell, look what happened with Le'Veon Bell and the New York Jets. $13, $14 million a year. But I saw a fascinating stat by ESPN's Dan Graziano. He said 6 of the highest paid running backs, 6 of the 10 highest paid running backs in the NFL missed time last year because of injury. Among those, some of the running backs I just mentioned. Devonta Freeman signed a new deal, missed time with injury. Jerick McKinnon signed a deal with the San Francisco 49ers, missed time because of an injury. And of course, Todd Gurley signed a contract as the highest paid running back in the NFL and missed time because of injury. And at the same time, while that's happening, teams are learning they can find not replacement, but some approximation of the value at much cheaper price. Nobody makes the argument that James Conner is Le'Veon Bell, but can he give you 70% of Le'Veon Bell at a third of the cost? Can C.J. Anderson give you 70% of Todd Gurley at a tenth of the cost? This is the kind of roster management and budgeting decisions that teams have to make. And they are seeing examples of that exact market correction. Can I get some percentage of the value of my star for much cheaper than the cost? But you have not yet seen, outside of the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team absolutely walk away from their star. And Melvin Gordon, running back for the Los Angeles Chargers, might just be that flashpoint. In his corner negotiations, he has it the Los Angeles Chargers window is now. Phillip Rivers' age, the quality of that roster, the opportunity in the AFC, the window for the Chargers is now, and it is short. It is in the next 2 to 3 years, and it will most likely need Melvin Gordon. But in the Chargers' corner, when it comes to those negotiations, what are we talking about? Are we talking about a top 5 running back in the league? I don't think so. What are we talking about? Do we have somebody else that can come in and give me some approximation of Melvin Gordon for much cheaper than the current going rate for top running backs in the league? We have Austin Eckler, and he's looked pretty good. Melvin Gordon may very well be the flashpoint. He may very well be the market correction. Or will it be Ezekiel Elliott, who is now suggested, it's perhaps possible, Ezekiel Elliott will be looking to get paid right now. I think there are 3 to 4 running backs that serve as the exception to the rule. 3 to 4 running backs who you go ahead and pay. 3 to 4 running backs who are irreplaceable. In my mind, those are, right now, Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, and I say this one with some hesitation, Alvin Kamara. I need to see Alvin Kamara put a full season together as the bell cow, but those 3 to 4 running backs are special. I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to have to pay Ezekiel Elliott, and I think they intend to. The problem is they're going to have to do it after Dak Prescott. Hey, if you missed any of the show today, including my opening segment here on the Stephen A. Smith Show about have we ever seen 3 players, 3 competitors trading haymakers about who is the best of all time, the way we're seeing Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal do so in tennis? Go check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Smith podcast, brought to you by the Capital One Venture Card. Earn unlimited double miles on every purchase every day. What's in your wallet? As I've said, there's a growing drumbeat within media circles that the Dallas Cowboys should not pay Dak Prescott. And why? Because they have to manage their roster. This exact conundrum. You got to pay Zeke. You got to pay Amari Cooper. You got to pay Byron Jones. If you pay Dak Prescott $30+ million a year, you can't put what's needed around him. And there are those who suggest he's not the kind of quarterback that can play with an average roster around him. I think those voices are wrong, but let me hear from them first. Like Hunter in Texas, who's on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. What's up, Hunter?
What's up, Will? I think that the Cowboys Dak $30 million a year because he averages 240 yards a game, and yes, he's won his division twice, but one year he didn't get close to winning it, and that was the year Zeke wasn't there. That's because Zeke and the defense carried the team. And it's in the weakest conference in the NFL, or one of the weakest conferences for sure, and that's inarguable.
Hunter, I beg to differ. I think it's extremely arguable, and I think it's extremely winnable for me to argue it. First of all, Dak Prescott is 32-16, Hunter. That's his record over 3 years. The year that you said he didn't come close to winning the division, the Dallas Cowboys in their down year, in the year when they were without Ezekiel Elliott for 6 games, went 9-7. He's never had a losing record. Hell, he's never had a 500 record. And that's taking into account the years that you said showed you some reason to doubt him. Second, the NFC East is the worst division in the NFL, Hunter argues. Thanks for the call, by the way, Hunter. No, stay here, Hunter. I'm sorry, but in the past 3 years, the same time frame we're talking about, Hunter, how many Super Bowl championships have come out of the NFC East? You still there, Hunter?
2. Yeah, 2.
No, the answer is 1.
You're right.
But thanks. I mean, I think you're helping my argument more than needed. In a 3-year window where Dak has been playing, Hunter, the Eagles came out of the NFC East and won it all. How is this the weakest division in football when there are 6 divisions across the league, and in the last 3 years, this division has produced one of the Super Bowl champions? How does that work, Hunter?
He has a top 5 running back and a top 5.
No, you're changing the argument. How is this the weakest division?
Top 5 running back and a top 5 defense, and he can't get him to the NFC Championship game. If he was an elite quarterback, he'd be able to do that.
Hunter,
he doesn't deserve $30 million a year doing that.
Man, that was a nice pivot, man. You moved away from your losing point real quick. Yeah, I think you made 2 of them. Thanks for the call, Hunter. You made 2 losing points. quickly tried to move to another. I'll make my argument for Dak Prescott in just a moment, but let's see if you can get some kind of tag team buddy like Scott in Idaho. Scott, Hunter needs help. Tag him in and come in here.
I just got to think that Dak Prescott is the weakness on their team. I just don't think he can throw the ball down the field with any sort of accuracy. I mean, having a solid running game with Zeke in the backfield and a solid, maybe the best offensive line in the game when they're all healthy. I think if you brought Carson Wentz over, I think they're a 16-0 team every year.
60. Where does this stuff come from? I'm serious. Don't go anywhere, Scott. Stay right here. Don't take him down or cat. Or don't hang up on him.
I've been trying to talk to you for months.
You have? Well, good. Well, I'm glad you're here with me because I don't understand where this stuff. Scott, I can choose my path here. I can be kind of a jerk or I can be friendly. And it's hard for me sometimes because, man, where does this – I'm serious now. Let's talk. Where does this stuff come from? Like, where does this perception that Carson Wentz is all-world and Dak Prescott is average come from? Because it doesn't come from anything that reflects reality. Let's just talk about reality for a moment on some of the points that you made. Dak Prescott, I believe, over the last half season, had the highest accuracy percentage of any quarterback in the NFL on deep throws. I need somebody to double check me on that because I don't want to ever be giving you false information. So Cerruti is running the show. Cat's riding shotgun today. Somebody get on that. That's a little bit of a hard stat to dig up, but that's banging around in between my ears somewhere here. Dak Prescott, who has a reputation as dink and dunk, check down artist, is anything but. But see, that's my point, Scott. Like, how do we come up with these things? Because I'm fairly sure when we come back in a second, somebody tells me he's going to be one of the most accurate quarterbacks on deep throws in the NFL. On top of that, you also made the argument about his supporting cast. I'm sorry, but isn't the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line consistently rated as one of the top offensive lines in the NFL, ahead of the Cowboys most of the time? Isn't that the case?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Maybe last year when they were banged up, but the prior 2 years, the Cowboys, I mean, they were unstoppable on the offensive line. The year they were 13-3, they just ran over people. Dak didn't have to throw the ball at all.
Dude,
they were just running over people.
I think we develop these ideas in our head, and then they don't stand up to the stats, the scrutiny, and we fall back in the end. We got a guy that works on this show named Pat. He's a big Eagles fan. He's like, I can give him all these stats. Dak is 32-16. He's made to the playoffs every year he's been in the NFL. He's won the division twice. He has a better head-to-head record against Carson Wentz than Carson Wentz. He has a higher completion percentage. He's got 67 touchdowns to 25 interceptions. Carson Wentz has more touchdowns, but then Dak runs for 18 touchdowns. He beats him in almost every category, both statistically and in actually winning football games. And yet we have this perception that, Dak isn't that great, you know. Carson would go 16-0. I swear, I don't understand where this stuff comes from at all. Look, one more. Corey in Texas. Come on, Corey. You guys can triple team me. What's up, Corey?
Okay, so I've been listening, so I'm going to talk about a few things that you've been saying before about Dak Prescott. I do not think Dak should be getting paid that $30 million. One, because Dak may be the third or fourth best player on the team. And so Dak is the leader as far as mentally, but Dak is not the best player on the Cowboys, and he's not carrying the Cowboys, period. And then you talk about him and Carson Wentz. Obviously he has a better record than Carson Wentz, but when you're talking about Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott, the biggest thing you talk about with Dak is a team stat. When you start talking about Carson, you name everything, and Carson has had an MVP season. I believe he got robbed of the MVP by Tom Brady.
Corey, you want to set aside wins and losses, which I find absurd, and you want to focus on stats, right? That's what you want to focus on to make your argument for Carson over Dak. Here's the thing about that. I win, Dak wins on every stat except for two. That is passing yardage and touchdowns. Dak wins on completion percentage, QBR, quarterback rating, every game-winning drives, fourth quarter comebacks, every single one, except for yards and touchdowns. So what is it that you hang your hat on in the end for Carson Wentz? Is it fantasy football productivity?
You can talk about stats. I'm not going to argue stats because I know they're very close. But when we talk about more than stats, Carson Wentz it's not even close, has played and has had an MVP season. You can't say the same about Dak.
Fine. That's fine. That's right.
In the 4 years, you cannot say that Dak has had close to that year Carson Wentz had.
Well,
when
he
they won
had
the Super Bowl. He was out in the playoffs.
He had a
has
rookie
never
year that
played in
rivals.
the MVP
Hold on, he had a
season.
record-setting rookie year that rivaled some of the greatest of all time. We're talking about names like Tom Brady here when we start talking about how great he was his rookie season.
You can say his MVP season, his rookie season, but it still wasn't better than Carson Wentz MVP caliber season. And we all know if he doesn't get hurt and miss those 3 games, he's going to win MVP.
Okay, I got you. Okay, Corey. So here's the thing. This is how this conversation goes. And I'm I make the argument for wins and losses. You say, hey, don't do team stats. You respond with supporting cast, and you ignore that the Eagles have had a great supporting cast, including a Super Bowl winning supporting cast around Carson Wentz. In fact, a supporting cast that was so great that it won the Super Bowl without Carson Wentz. So I find that absurd. And then you move to stats, and I point out that you really only have 2 stats, and you say, okay, let's ignore stats as well. And it always comes back to one thing, which you hang your hat on in the Wentz versus Dak debate. You hang your hat on the eye test, and that 2/3 of a season that did put Carson Wentz into an MVP race. And all I'm telling you is, you're in the end, after we have the debate and we set aside all the things you want to set aside, you're putting all of it, by the way, thanks for the call, Corey, on that 2/3 of a season. And Dak has 3 seasons of evidence. 2/3 of a season that admittedly was better than any moment Dak has had as a take your sample size, that's better. But Dak has 3 seasons, which adds up to much more than Carson Wentz. All right, let's move forward. The Stephen A. Smith Show is brought to you by Barbasol. After 100 years of making shaving cream, Barbasol is finally making razors. Well, that was a no-brainer. Try the Barbasol Ultra 6 Plus today. Save now at Barbasol.com. The argument about whether or not Russell Westbrook and James Harden are going to work together, to me, what it ignores is the absolute revolution going on across the sports landscape. It continues to focus on the idea that individuals and individual talent is the way you win championships. And that flies in the face of everything we've seen in almost every team sport over the past decade. Here was Ryan Hollins once again on ESPN's First Take today, laying out why this is going to be so great.
You got Russell Westbrook and James Harden on the same team. And guess what's back for D'Antoni? Guess what's back? The 7-second offense. They're going to push the pace. They're going to run. They're no longer going to play slow. James Harden will not have to manage his minutes because he has a guy where he's tired. Your turn, Russ. Russ is tired. Your turn, James. These two are going to be absolutely dynamic. And I get it. I still like the Lakers. I still like the Clippers. But guess what? You don't want to see these boys in the first or second round. It's going to be a problem.
It's a problem if you believe the way to championships is simply to have the players on the floor that can win their individual matchups. But that's not what's going on in sports today. Ryan said a lot of ridiculous things in that, like it's going to be the return of the 7 seconds or less Mike D'Antoni Phoenix Suns. That was pass, move, go, driven by Steve Nash. And what we're looking at here is 2 players that play isolation ball and slow down the movement of the ball and the players off the ball. What more, he offers up that James Harden is going to play off the ball, which I don't even know if that's a good idea, much less I believe it's going to happen. There's so much required optimism and setting aside of egos to believe that James Harden and Russell Westbrook are going to work together, but more importantly, it defies the revolution going on in sports. Here's what I'm talking about, all right? Anybody that's listened to the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio probably has picked this up at some point, but my kids are super into soccer. Now, what that means living in New York City and what that means for the wintertime is they end up playing a sport called futsal. I don't know how many of you guys that listen out there have ever heard of futsal, but it's essentially small-sided soccer. It's 5-on-5, 4 in the field and a goalie, a little bit like basketball, and it's played on a hard court with a little bit heavier ball, and it's a very passing-oriented game. And we went this past weekend to Atlantic City, where there was the national championships for futsal. And the team my kid's a part of went to it. And, man, you know what was just so very obvious at this is that the teams that won, it wasn't about, no matter what people might want to tell themselves, it wasn't about talent deficits. It wasn't about who had the best individual skill players. It was 100% about the teams that were organized, ran a system, and all 4 boys in the field at the same time knew if he does X, I do Y. All 4 players moving like a very sophisticated ecosystem in responsive and coordinated and beautifully choreographed ways that confuse defenses and gut you wide open. And by the way, it had nothing to do with who had the ball in their hands. It was guys moving without the ball that gutted teams open. If you think about what's happened over the past couple of years, this has been what's happened in sports. It has been a product of system and organization over talent. Every single sport. I want you to think about this, okay? I grew up in Texas. Football is everything in Texas. When I was a kid and I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, the teams that won the state championship in football in Texas were the teams that were the biggest, strongest, fastest, without a doubt. It was who had the best talent on the field. And then something weird started happening. All of these schools across Texas who were suburban, honestly, a lot of times, small kids, not blessed with huge size, has changed over time. And clearly at talent deficit, started winning it all. At the time in the 90s, it was teams like Austin Westlake started winning it all. You're like, that's not a football powerhouse. Football powerhouse is Odessa Permian and Dallas Carter. This is who wins it all. Austin Westlake was winning it all. What happened was they started implementing systems starting in middle school, offenses that they taught everybody in that school system how to run. By the time those boys arrived to high school, they've been running the same offense through high school football and 7-on-7 in the spring and summer until they knew it like it was instinct, like the back of their hand. And they gutted everybody across the state. Started racking up championships. And then here's what's fascinating. All these little quarterbacks who were, as I said before, perhaps not as talented as the ones you were running out before with size and ability, but with the ability to execute a system, short quarterbacks, in fact, started going off to D1 colleges. And those colleges adopted the same systems. And you saw the emergence of quarterbacks named Drew Brees, then Baker Mayfield, then Kyler Murray. Guys that if you were focused on individual talent, wouldn't even been put in the position to play quarterback, but you were focused on the system, and the system won, and everybody adapted. My point is, this is not just in football. And by the way, now, Big 12, from Texas high school football to Big 12 offenses to the NFL. What is the NFL? It's Austin Westlake, Lake Travis, Texas high school football offenses. It's Baker Mayfield in Cleveland, Pat Mahomes in Kansas City, Kyler Murray in Arizona. It's what it is, the systems. And it's happened in basketball in the same way. Pass, move. It's the Steph Curry revolution. It's happened happened in soccer. And now you're going to tell me because you put Russell Westbrook and James Harden on the same team, the talent is going to be something they can overcome anything? No. What system fits these two guys? It defies the revolution going on in sports. I've got more on this. I want to tell you more examples. I want to hear from you as well. 888-729-3776. You need seats to a game? Download the Vivid Seats app and enter promo code CHAMPS at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Don't buy just any seat. Get a Vivid seat. All right. I want to hear from you. Plus, Ben Simmons has a $170 million max deal with the Philadelphia 76ers. Is he worth it? It's coming up on the Stephen A. Smith Show with Will Kane.